Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, there is a massive manhunt underway as a terror suspect has escaped a UK prison dressed as a chef. Yes, you did indeed hear that right. We will have the very latest on that, and collapsing concrete in schools, creaking NHS, and let's face it, problems pretty much all over the place. And if you ask me, we can trace much of this down to a single thing: short-term thinking, sticking plaster politics, whatever name we give it. I think it is a cancer within our political system. But how on earth do we fix it? And Royal Mail want to scrap their Saturday deliveries. Should they be able to? Yes or no? And take a look at this dog, the XL bully dog. Goodness me, I have to be completely honest, why anyone would want to own one of those is absolutely beyond me. But anyway, those things are responsible for a spate of deaths. Should this breed be banned? On the other side, there are people saying it's nothing to do with a dog. It's all about bad owners, is it? And burglars are criminals earmarking your house. I'm going to tell you their latest trick. And I cannot help but wonder, though, are we sometimes making it a little bit too easy for them? We'll have it all to come and more. But before we get into it, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Good evening to you. It's 6:01. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. A manhunt's underway for a former British soldier who's escaped from Wandsworth Prison. 21-year-old Daniel Abed Khalif was awaiting trial on charges related to terrorism and the Official Secret Act. It's understood he escaped from a kitchen and clung to a food delivery van just before 8 o'clock this morning. and was last seen wearing a chef's uniform. He's of slim build, has short brown hair and is around 6'2". An alert has been issued to UK ports and airports amid reports of long queues at border points and extra security. Commander Dominic Murphy, head of the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command, says the police are doing all they can.
We have officers and staff from across London and counter-terrorism policing, so across the country. As is normally the case in these matters, we have published the details of Daniel Khalif to officer colleagues around the country and borders colleagues as well. Our intention here is to try and find him as quick as possible. I believe very strongly that he presents a low risk to the public, but nonetheless, he's an individual who was on remand and should be in custody, and we're doing everything we can to try and find him as quick as possible.
The Prime Minister's defended his funding decisions on schools while he was Chancellor in the wake of the crumbling concrete crisis. He was responding to questions from the Labour leader, who visited one of the schools which have been ordered to fully or partially close. The Prime Minister rejected a claim that he cut budgets for school repairs, saying he actually raised them by 20%. Well, earlier the government published the long-awaited list of schools that have been affected. During PMQs, Sir Keir Starmer blamed the scale of the problem on Conservative government failures.
This crisis is the inevitable result of 13 years of cutting corners, botched jobs, sticking plaster politics. It's the sort of thing you expect from cowboy builders, saying that everyone else is wrong, everyone else is to blame, protesting that they've done an effing good job, even as the ceiling falls in. The difference, Mr. Speaker, is that in this case, the cowboys are running the country.
Well, the Prime Minister responded by saying the government did act decisively in the face of new information, and he used a nickname for the Labour leader borrowed from the Boris Johnson era.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is exactly the kind of political opportunism that we've come to expect from Captain Hindsight over here. Before today, he's never once raised this issue with me across this dispatch box.
17 people have been killed and 32 wounded by a Russian missile strike in the city of Kostyantynivka in the east of Ukraine. Authorities have posted footage which shows a loud explosion ripping through a busy market. President Volodymyr Zelensky's condemned the attack and has confirmed a child is amongst those killed. The attack came just hours after the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken paid a surprise visit to Kyiv to reaffirm US support for Ukraine. The football player at the centre of a controversial kiss has filed a criminal complaint against the president of the Spanish Football Federation. Luis Rubiales now faces criminal charges for kissing Jenny Hermoso on the lips after the Women's World Cup final. He claims it was consensual, which she denies. Last month, the prosecutor for Spain's High Court said Rubiales could face a sexual assault charge which carries a prison term of between 1 and 4 years if Hermoso was to file a complaint. Today was the hottest day since 2016. Temperatures reached 32 degrees at Kew Gardens in London, and the heat wave will continue for the rest of the week until Saturday, when it could hit 33 degrees in London. And if it does, it will be warmer than Ibiza. The hottest day of the year would be if it hit 33, although cooler conditions in the north. The UK Health Security Agency has issued an amber warning for heat until Sunday evening. And the Rolling Stones have announced their first album in nearly 2 decades. Mick Jagger says Hackney Diamonds will be released on the 20th of October. The band chose Hackney in East London for the launch, a place they say is at the heart of the new album. It's their first collection of songs since the death of long-time drummer Charlie Watts in August 2021. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker too. Just say, play GB News. Now it's time for Michelle.
Thanks for that, Aaron. I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got the leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin, and the journalist, Quentin Letts. Good evening to both of you. You know the drill as well. It's not just about us three. It is very much about you guys at home. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet me at GBNews. Already, you're not happy with me. It's only 6.5 minutes past 6, but I've upset quite a few of you already on one of my topics that I've got coming up, which is I want to talk to you about those dogs, those American XL bullies. I put a picture up at the start of the programme, and I was asking whether or not the breed should be banned. There's been calls for it to be so. Lots of you are not happy. You're saying, do not blame the dog, Michelle. That dog is absolutely gorgeous. These breeds are gorgeous dogs, so you're telling me. You're going to have to work a little bit harder to convince me, I've got to say. Someone else saying, this is all about bad owners, but the owner of a cockapoo would be far less dangerous than the bad owner of an XL bully. Apparently, some of my viewers are saying that it's about the ego of the owner that would make people get some of these types of dogs. I'm fascinated to hear from you as well. I'll be speaking to a behavioural psychologist, a dog behavioural specialist as well, about how true that is, about whether it's the dog or the owners. Also, as well, I want to talk to you about how safe your house is when it comes to burglary. But before I get into any of that, I must kick off with tonight's big story. Have you heard about this? There is an urgent manhunt underway. A prisoner has escaped from Wandsworth Prison. Let's cut straight to the chase, and I shall cross live to our home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, good evening. Please bring on my viewers straight up to speed.
Well, it is now a nationwide manhunt that's underway. We're hearing about some significant congestion and delays at some of the main ports and airports out of the UK, including Dover, Heathrow and Gatwick, as the security services have thrown a security blanket around those ports of exit to try to ensure that this escaped prisoner does not get out of the country. The search for the time being is being concentrated around London. This young man escaped just before 8 a.m. this morning and has links, we're told, to the Kingston area in southwest London, not that far really from Wandsworth Prison in southwest London. However, police say it is perfectly possible that he may have escaped outside London. He has also got connections to the northwest of England. A little earlier I was speaking to the head of counter-terrorism command here at Scotland Yard, Commander Dominic Murphy, who told me just what unfolded at 7:50 this morning.
So around 7:50 this morning, Daniel Khalife, who is a man who was on remand following a counter-terrorism investigation, escaped from Wandsworth Prison and is currently at large somewhere in the UK.
And in terms of how he escaped, we're told that he was wearing chef's paraphernalia, chef's uniform, and that he may have clung to the underside of a food delivery truck. Do you know that to be the case?
Well, I can say that he was, yes, wearing checkered red and white trousers and a white T-shirt and brown boots when he escaped from prison. As to how he escaped, that's entirely a matter for the prison service. Clearly it will form part of our investigation. That's a matter for the prison service.
Well, there was some significant information there from Commander Murphy really about this individual. The fact that, well, he was wearing that chef's uniform, as you heard. We understand, according to the police, that he did actually work in the kitchen at the prison, which is an indication clearly of how he came about this uniform. It wasn't just given to him by another prison, but what the Commander was not able to confirm for us is what I've heard from other sources, is that this young man clung to a food delivery vehicle after it came to Wandsworth Prison, and as it was leaving the jail, he clung to, we think, the underside of that vehicle as it left the prison.
And Mark, when was the alert raised? Because I see now that there's calls for everyone to stay vigilant, keep your eyes and your ears open and all the rest of it. But you say this happened at 7:50 this morning. So when did it become public knowledge?
Well, it became public knowledge in terms of the Metropolitan Police alerting us and everyone else mid-afternoon. When it actually was revealed to the prison services that one of their prisoners, a man due to stand trial on terrorism charges, had escaped, we don't know. There's still quite a few unanswered questions. The commander could only go so far in what he was able to tell us, and said that really these are matters for the prison service in terms of when exactly they knew about the escape and how he was able to escape in the first place. Clearly, part of that has been answered by confirmation that this young prisoner was working in the kitchen, so he got his chef's paraphernalia from there. But did that give him access to other areas? Probably not. But if that food delivery truck was right up at the kitchen, you can then probably see why he was close enough to the food delivery truck to be able to attach himself to it. But yes, quite how long after he escaped the prison services became aware of that, we don't know yet. It's one of those key unanswered questions, Michelle.
Yeah, indeed. Final question. I mean, this prisoner was previously, I think, held in Belmarsh, transferred at some point to Wandsworth. Is he a risk to the public? Do people need to be concerned or not?
Well, what the commander said to me with regard to that is he said, obviously he knows this young man through Counter-Terrorism Command and the investigation that they launched into his alleged offending. He's charged with a hoax bomb incident, also is charged with trying to elicit information that could be of use to terrorists and also offences under the Official Secrets Act. However, the commander does not believe that he poses a significant risk to the public. Having said that, he's clearly, you know, an alleged offender facing a trial, determined to get away. So the advice to the public is not to go near him, but if anybody sees this young prisoner, then they are to call 999 as a matter of urgency.
Thank you. Fascinating stuff, Mark White. Quentin, I do find this fascinating. So this fella got out of prison apparently about 8 o'clock this morning. It then becomes public knowledge, so everyone's got to keep their eyes peeled for him at some point in the afternoon. So we're talking about 6 hours gap. I mean, he's not going to stand around taking selfies for hours on end. He's going to be gone. This is quite remiss, isn't it not?
Yes, it's surprising that it took so long. Embarrassing for the governor, embarrassing for the prison service, embarrassing for politicians, no doubt, in the long run. The authorities will be looking at this suspect's network of friends and family, and the allegations against him are serious. They need to be tested in a court of law, and you'd have thought he would be as keen to have them tested as anyone else, given that he is innocent until proved guilty. And it is got a feel, it's got a slightly old-fashioned feel to it. This is an old-fashioned news story, the sort of thing that used to happen in the 1960s with people who would escape from prison, almost like something out of porridge, isn't it?
Well, it is. These things do happen very rarely, apparently. There's been 5 prison escapes since 2017 and fewer than 20 since 2010. David, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I've never heard a story like this that's been given so much mainstream media attention. I mean, yes, you say there's been other prison escapes, but I guess, you know, he is a very high concern prisoner because of the charges he's facing. But, you know, it's like something out of a movie almost, isn't it? With a Prison Break or something, clinging to the underside of a delivery vehicle. I mean...
Well, one of my viewers, Steve, he's got in touch. Says, Michelle, I was a prison officer for 30 years. He said he's going to give me a bit of insight into how it all works. He said, when a food vehicle arrives in prison, it's searched, including the driver, then it's escorted to the prison kitchen by prison staff, and whilst being alerted, the member of staff is responsible for the security of said vehicle. Before the vehicle leaves the kitchen secured area, the kitchen staff are then responsible for a roll check of the prison kitchen prisoners. He says this is a diabolical lack of professionalism and security. I've got to tell you, Steve, there'll be people certainly panicking today about whether or not they've done their jobs properly. I'm old enough to remember, although I look 21.
You do not look it.
I know. I am old enough to remember the manhunt of Raoul Mert. Do you remember that?
I do.
That was one of the most...
That's quite recent.
I know, did you think I was about to say, I'm old enough to remember the 1940s
The John
or something?
Stonehouse case. These news stories... They have the trouble is that they have a certain glamour to them, but these are serious matters, and there is a danger that we as journalists can sometimes glamorise the people involved. But the viewer who was saying that, who was making very important points about the security checks and the normal procedures, has everything been done that would normally be done? And if it were not done, why not?
Well, obviously the answer to that, in part at least, must be No, because if you're doing your roll call, you must realise if that prison officer's telling me you do your checks, have you got all of your staff appointed for and allocated for before the van leaves? Clearly the answer to that, if this is the escape route chosen, is obviously no.
Well, if the answer is no, then what was the reason for that? And was it to do with sloppiness? Was it to do with cuts? Was it to do with complicity?
Well, you say cuts. I give it about 5 minutes before Rishi Sunak is indeed blamed for this one, if he's not been already. But the Raoul Mert thing that I referenced, 2010, he didn't escape from prison, obviously, but he did go on the on the run. It lasted about 2 days, and it was, to Quentin's point, glamorised. ITV ended up doing a dramatisation of that awful scenario. So I do think, as like the public psyche, we do seem to be kind of quite gripped to the notions of manhunts and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's because these days the news and entertainment have got some kind of crossover. So people watching sometimes, don't see the difference between the two if it's been presented in a certain way. Obviously, with this case with Raoul Moat, it was, it seemed like something out of a movie. You have things in books and stories all the time. So when it happens in reality, people just relate that to a story and get interested in it.
It was the weirdest thing. And then if anyone was following that live, the Raoul Mert thing, do you remember the Gascoigne? The fishing rod, the chickens, the dressing gowns. I will never forget any of that. It was all very odd. Anyway, look, that is the story of what we know so far of that prisoner that has escaped from Wandsworth Prison. We are across that story in detail. So if anything evolves, anything changes it, you will be the first to know. But look, after the break, we've got a packed agenda. I want to talk to you about politics in this country. So much is broken, and I am blaming a lot of it on short-termism, sticking past politics, whatever we want to call it. If you agree with me, how do we fix that? You tell me.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, Quentin Letts and David Curtin Remain. You guys are getting in touch. It's eye-opening stuff you're telling me about the prison protocols. Russell's just been in touch. One of my previous viewers was explaining how it works, about the kitchen trucks, delivery trucks leaving. He says, Michelle, you missed a bit. The vehicle, the kitchen vehicle, is also searched before leaving the prison. It's searched in its entirety. So who knows what's gone on? I'm sure that all the details will come out in time. If you just tuned in, you're wondering what on earth I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that we've had a prisoner escaping from Wandsworth Prison. This morning we'll have all the details on that manhunt as it happens. But politicians, I want to talk to you about them, if I may, because we've got problems now all over the place. The latest scandal is, of course, the concrete scenario within schools. Lots of finger pointing, lots of whose fault is it, lots of why can I not get credit for doing a bleeping good job from education secretaries and the like. It got me thinking, Quentin, because so many aspects of politics in this day and age, I feel that there's way too much focus on how do the politicians get themselves re-elected, too short-term thinking and not enough long-term strategic thinking and planning, not just on concretes, but you can have it right across the NHS. I will blame this on that as well. Some of our energy supplies, failings there. Nick Clegg, of course. I've got a clip of him at some point.
Nick Clegg? Gosh.
Nick Clegg, yeah.
Who was he?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've had quite a few goings on since then, haven't we? But
Sir Nicholas.
I remember him.
He's making
saying,
balls up of Facebook now.
In fact, can I show you that clip, actually, before I bring Quentin in? I've got his clip.
Sir Nick Clegg?
Yes, let's have a look.
You're not concerned about your...
The most optimistic scenarios from the government itself. There's no way they're going to have new nuclear come on stream until about 2021, 2022. So it's just not even an answer.
There's Cleggy. How we miss him. I think you're wrong, actually, on this, Michelle. I do think you're wrong, because the implication of what you're saying, short-termism, is a bad thing. The implication of that is you want to have longer terms of office, and I'm not sure that that would go down very well. I think 5 years.
That's
not such a good idea, is it? And also, we do have a long-term government in this country. It's called the civil service, and the permanent secretary in any department will be the civil servant, and that's why you have the civil servants in a way, because they are meant to be the institutional memory. They're meant to be the people who are accountable as well as the politicians. However, it doesn't quite work like that, because the civil servants tend to move on a bit, and also they tend not to get blamed very much.
But the civil servants, when they're not on a beach or wherever it is that they are their enactors. They are not the deciding. They're not the strategic kind of orienteers of what we're trying to achieve. And you
well, yeah, they are actually. They are up to a point, and actually they're probably behind the scenes more powerful than you think. The other villains in this piece, Michelle, the ones who've got away with it so far, are the architects, and you know,
the architects, the concrete ones,
the modernist architecture movement is all goes big gangbusters about anything that's newfangled is great. The trouble with newfangled is it hasn't been tested, and therefore they're always pushing onto us new building techniques, which lo and behold, then a few years later, turn out to be no good. And the great bias among the commentariat is against, for instance, Victorian school buildings. Victorian school buildings are still standing. They're a lot better than those that were put up in the 70s, 80s and 90s.
Let me bring you in, David. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with you on that. On the older buildings, the Victorian buildings, Georgian buildings and so on, are built fantastically and magnificently, and they have such a humanity about them, and they're far better than these things that were thrown up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s with short-term planning. So there was no long-term planning there, because these buildings, as I understand, only have 30-year life cycles anyway. They're meant to last for 30 years and then that's it.
I don't think it's the whole buildings. I think this element of this building component, I think that is what is now understood to have about a 30-year lifespan.
Yeah, but also these buildings were often put up by the architects with a very political agenda, driven by a sort of architectural Marxism, which is, lo and behold, it's turning out not to be such a great thing. Well, aren't we all surprised?
Well, you see, that is the long-termism. There is long-termism, but a lot of it is to adhere to Marxist principles, if you like. So there's no thinking about the long-term, durability of the buildings, but people are actually progressing with a Marxist agenda, a cultural Marxist agenda, the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Agreement, net zero, all of those things which all of the main political parties in Westminster are signed up to to for the long term. I completely disagree with that.
You concluded me wrong, by the way, because what you concluded, I'm saying too much short-termism is a bad thing, and you said, therefore, what you think I'm suggesting is longer-term governments. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I would suggest is perhaps we need to look at a model where we strip out some of the crucial components within our society. I don't know, let's say social care or elements of the NHS, or even the NHS in its entirety, if you like, and you then have cross-party working for a long-term strategy, and that is the strategy that whoever the government of the day is elected to be, they enact this longer-term strategy as mutually agreed.
You do actually get quite a lot of cross-party work in Parliament, but the idea that things such as social policy and education policy would never be political is, I don't think that's realistic. And you'll get ministers coming in, because ministers will define themselves and they will sell themselves as political creatures. And actually, the electorate wants that. And you know, that's what we quiver to. That's what gets our hindquarters moving.
I wouldn't want that either. I wouldn't want every single party to be signed up to an agenda behind the scenes, which is going to be enacted without anybody having a say at the ballot box about what's going on.
Matt says there is a long-term strategy, Michelle, and it's all about a long-term strategy for managing our decline. And you were saying hats off to them. They are doing a superb job at making that happen.
It's a success story.
He's not optimistic, is our Matt, I don't think,
Cheer up.
on some of that. Jenny says we need 10-year Parliament so that the civil service know what the policy is, that basically it will all come to fruition and we will have results within the same Parliament. 10 years?
No, absolutely not. Look, the civil service are supposed to do what the government tells them to do. The government needs to be elected, and they need to be elected regularly, so that if they go wrong, people have a chance to get rid of them.
A 10-year Parliament will mean we still have 4 years to go of Theresa May being Prime Minister.
Well, Chris says, Michelle, you've read our minds. My hubby and I were talking about this just the other day, and they've come up with a plan. They've seen it one step beyond me. They're saying energy security, NHS defence, taxation, that should all be taken out of the government of the day, cross-party, as I was suggesting, but they do confess that left them with a question, which is, if you did that, what on earth would government then take control of?
And I don't think the voters want that. The voters want to have a say, a regular say, on matters such as social policy and schools and hospitals. They want to have a say.
The trouble is now you've got 4 parties that are essentially doing the same thing.
Yeah, well, that may be because they think that's where the public is. I mean,
I'm trying to make a difference.
Maybe just a failure by the political elite.
Yeah, and you say that your 4 main parties are trying to make a difference, but you're trying to do something different. But under first past the post, the reality is, whether it's fortunate or not, people have different views on our system. But whilst we've got first past the post, it's very difficult for new parties to actually cut through, isn't it?
It is difficult, but we've got to make the challenge. We've got to keep going and try to make a change.
Do you agree with that? Do you? Who do you vote for? Who would you vote for in the next election? And if it is a smaller, kind of up-and-coming party, do you put your cross in the box thinking, yeah, do you know what? This is a reality, perhaps. This is has a realistic chance of becoming into fruition, or do you just sit there and think there's just no point at all? It's either going to be Labour or Tory, as is the system that we have. Not a lot of love coming through, I have to say, for civil servants. Are you out there? Are there any civil servants watching this? Are you watching the conversation saying, stop always kicking us, let's celebrate us? Do you sit there saying, echoing perhaps the Gillian Keegans of the land, saying that you're always kicked instead of being supported when you think you're doing a good job? Get in touch. I'd be fascinated to hear from you. Lots coming up. I want to talk to you about dangerous dogs, whether or not they should be banned in some cases. Royal Mail, should they be forced to keep their Saturday deliveries? One of my viewers has said Saturday deliveries, we only get 3 deliveries a week as it is. You tell me your thoughts.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry. Till 7 o'clock, the leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin, and the journalist Quentin Letts alongside me. Lots of the ladies are liking you, Quentin, tonight.
That's very sweet of them.
They are. Kathy, Lindsay, just to name 2, but I've had a lot of nice feedback.
Lindsay might be a bloke.
Oh, yes, that is a very good point. Well, Kathy might be as well. Who knows in this day and age? I shouldn't be so presumptuous, should I? Martin says, Michelle, I completely agree with you about short-termism. He's got a solution as well. He says we need a 25-year plan for the country, a vision that everybody signs up to, all the population and all the political parties, and then each elected government would be responsible for the deliverables that fall within their 5-year window.
Oh, God,
is that the solution? Quentin's not having any of that.
It sounds like Albania in communist days.
Okay.
Really 25-year plans. Enver Hoxha.
Martin, I don't think he agrees with you.
Statues of Sir Keir Starmer in the central square.
Royal Mail, should they be forced to keep Saturday deliveries? Apparently now they're trying to look at scrapping them. If they do scrap them, they reckon it could save them about £225 million. I was going to ask what about us customers, but actually some of my viewers are getting in touch with me already, saying that Saturday delivery chance would be a fine thing. They've not had them for quite some time. One of my viewers says that they get 3 deliveries a week. You didn't tell me where you live, though, so do get in touch and let me know where you are.
They're supposed to. Everyone is supposed to have 6 deliveries a week, and this is part of their obligation.
If anyone's written to you.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Just
might not have any
bills,
friends
mainly.
or...
But they are, important correspondence. But, I don't get letters much anymore, like from personal letters. I usually get emails. They come through that way. But, absolutely, I think that they should be made to keep Saturday deliveries. I mean, they are in a bit of a mess. Well, we've always had it. And
what are you so desperate to receive on a Saturday that you can't wait till Monday for?
I'm not desperate to receive anything, but I think it's something that we've always had. I think it's a service that we've had, and it's a service that we should keep. And there's other ways that they can go about rectifying their financial situation. Actually, they're putting the price of a first-class stamp up by 15p on the 2nd of October from £1.10 to £1.25. If they're doing that, that would give them enough money to get out of the black hole they're in straight away. So why do they need to reduce Saturday services as well?
The managers of Royal Mail are ocean-going clunkers. They are really useless. If your customers think you're not doing a very good job, you don't reduce the service, you increase it. They shouldn't be scrapping Saturday deliveries. They should be introducing Sunday deliveries. They should be leaning into this and saying we're going to make things much better. People want to have, in this modern day and age, they want to have parcels delivered 7 days a week. And therefore, this is a time to ramp it up. The posties of this country are generally pretty brilliant. The problem is not with them; it's to do with the managers, some of whom are paid too much, but also just a lack of imagination and the inability of Royal Mail, which has a fantastic, privileged position in the delivery world. The inability of that company to take on the private delivery companies is one of the worst failures of business.
But I think what they'd look to do is stop the Saturday letter deliveries and then perhaps look to scale up their parcel deliveries, make the parcel thing 7 days a week, cut back the letter deliveries, because at the end of the day, what letter do you desperately need?
Your NHS appointments, things like that.
No, but you don't need that on a Saturday.
Well, you might do, and surgeries should be working 7 days a week too.
No, because
I mean, the society is now a 7-day-a-week operation. Only in parts of Scotland, I think, Stornoway perhaps, do you have Sunday closed down. And you've got to really be reflecting the realities of the world if you're going to run a successful business.
Or people can just stop writing to you. Why does the NHS need to write you a letter on a bit of paper? They'll probably have your mobile telephone number. Why can't they just send you a text and say, this is your appointment date?
They have a lot of elderly people who are not thus equipped.
But you're assuming that elderly people can't read text messages or don't have mobile phones.
I think that there is still a problem. You've got to ensure communication and equity of communication.
Or you can ask, because I get NHS letters and they drive me insane. I don't want them. Send me a text. So why don't you ask the customer, the patient, to opt in?
Yeah, sure.
What do you want? How do you want to contact
by all
you?
means. But also, if you're delivering parcels, what's so difficult about putting a letter in with it?
No, they do. No, they often do it. They often do it separately. I do want to give a quick shout out before I go to the weather, though, to my mum's postman in Hessel. He's absolutely awesome. I gave him a £10 tip the other day because he delivered to my mum a letter that I'd put the completely wrong address on. So some of our posters, they are worth their weight in gold.
Russell in Herefordshire.
Oh, there you go. Russell in Herefordshire.
Brilliant.
Anyone you want to give a shout out to your postman?
Yeah, my postman. Thank you for delivering my mail all the time.
Well, there
6 days a week.
And who are you that got in touch with me? Who is that viewer that told me you only get 3 per week? I want to know, where do you live in this country? And speaking of the country, it is a scorcher up and down at the moment, isn't it? Let's have a look at the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A warm, sultry night to come for many of us. More hot sunshine into Thursday. A small chance of thunderstorms developing towards western and southwestern areas in particular, as low pressure sends heat and humidity northwards across the UK. Now, any thunderstorms that do develop will be very hit and miss, quite isolated, mostly towards western areas overnight. But there is the chance that these thunderstorms will contain frequent flashes of lightning, so they could be quite visible in the night sky where they do occur. Some low cloud creeping into the east. It's a warm night for many, mid to high teens, and in some places no colder than 20 or 21 Celsius. So some patchy fog about first thing Thursday, some of this misty low cloud in the east, but that will tend to retreat to North Sea coasts. And for many it's a fine day, but we've still got that potential thundery activity moving north into Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland by the afternoon. It's a very warm or hot day in places, 29 to 32 Celsius in the south, 28 Celsius for northern Scotland. So the heat is extensive across the UK, and it's a warm start to Friday. Again, some of that misty low cloud in the east. Again, the threat of thundery showers towards the west and southwest, but otherwise it's just a case of sunny skies, and the temperatures continue to rise up to 33 Celsius in places by Saturday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, there you go. It's an absolute belter, isn't it? Finally, at last. Carol says, I only get 3 deliveries a week, and we have done for a long time. We live in rural Kent, she says. Lots of you getting in touch. Frank says, my son has to pick his post up from the sorting office 400 yards away. Why? I don't understand that. Doesn't he get a delivery? Is he missing it? Is he not home? I need more details, Frank, as to what's going on with your son's life and his post, please. Right, very important thing that I need to talk to you about. It's going to be very random, but bear with me. Have you seen a Christmas gnome next to your house? I might have a picture. I don't know if I can get you a picture. I will. If you've seen this gnome, you might think, well, that's a little bit weird. You might I don't know, just turn a blind eye and walk past it. But I'm here to warn you that if you see these things, you have to be vigilant, because apparently what's going on now, criminals, they're marking out basically the properties that they're going to try and perhaps try their arm at burglaring later on with these gnomes. They're popping them around the place.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is they're putting them in people's front yards and seeing if anyone picks them up because they're a bit of rubbish, which you would do if you're at home, and seeing then who is not at home, who's on holiday. It's a sort of similar advice that you might give, like make sure these things don't stay there. Don't make sure that you don't leave mail around, because thieves look for houses which have got a big pile up of mail, because then they see, oh, someone's not at home.
Yeah, these thieves are getting very sophisticated, aren't they?
Garden gnomes. Yeah, I suppose I'm not going to say anything against garden gnomes. That way, death lies. But
these
it
are
always used to be
Christmas
said.
ones as well, specific ones.
Christmas ones, are
yes.
right? Okay, so just a normal gnome.
A normal gnome. If you see a normal
worry.
Random fishing one in your garden, I don't think that's too suspicious.
That's
the Christmas ones.
But it always used to be said that the most popular magazine or publication at Wormwood Scrubs was Country Life, because it had tremendous spreads of big posh country houses, and you could see all the valuables on display, listed even, you know, that work by Matisse in the drawing room. And so fingers always used to read that and then go and nick it. It's the same principle.
You don't even need that magazine these days, because what a lot of people do, and let me just be clear, by the way, I don't condone anyone burgling anybody's property. It is one of, if you ask me, one of the worst crimes that you can commit to somebody. Going into somebody's home and thinking that somehow you've got the right to rifle through their possessions, it turns my stomach, it makes my skin crawl. But there are some people out there who cannot help themselves but boast about their possessions, their material wealth, all over Instagram and social media. And then, I don't know if they're just dopey or what, because after boasting about their Rolexes and this and that and the other, they then, 5 minutes later, post that they are on holiday.
Yeah,
and
which
I don't want you to get broken into, obviously, but don't you put 2 and 2 together?
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but that's the way life is. There are some bad people who will take advantage of you if you let them take advantage of you. I mean, it's like, you know, if you're in the pub, you leave your wallet on the table and then go to the toilet, you come back, your wallet's going to be gone. So the answer is don't leave your wallet on the table. It's a similar thing, you know, it's just the way the world is.
So if I put on social media, if I put a picture of my wife's knickknacks, then they might get stolen.
I think
good idea.
I think that I call what I call knickknacks might be slightly different to what you call knickknacks. And if you put a picture of your wife's knickknacks on what I think you mean knickknacks...
No, I mean knickknacks. I don't mean anything else. I don't mean anything vulgar. Keep the party clean, Michelle.
Yes.
I'm staying out of this one.
Right, look, I want to talk to you about dangerous dogs after the break. The XL Bully breed of dog, should that be banned or not?
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Dewbs & Co. With me, Michelle Dewberry till 7, leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin, and the journalist Quentin Let's Keep Me Company. Just before the break, we were talking about Royal Mail and about Saturday deliveries. Frank got in touch saying his son has to pick up his purse from the sorting office 400 yards away. I asked for further details, and dear readers and listeners, I'm pleased to tell you I've got them, because what he's saying is his son, in Dunstable, apparently, the purseman has been taken off for cover for another round, so he reckons his son has to now go and collect his purse. He says he doesn't even get a refund on whoever it is that's paid for the stamps to send that purse to him. Linda is not happy with me. I was suggesting that perhaps the NHS could send text messages for appointments instead of letters. She says her mother cannot read text messages and doesn't appreciate my attitude. But Quentin pointed that out, so I compromised and said, well, actually, you could send letters to those that want and need them and offer other people the text messages as a solution. And just before the break, we were talking about Quentin's wife's knickknacks. It meant something very different to me. It meant a form of underwear. And David Curtin chucked his 10 pence in the break and told me that knickknacks for him are a brand of crisps. So there you go. I'll let you decide which definition you closely align with. But I want to talk to you about dangerous dogs. The XL Bully, that dog has been responsible for a spate of attacks and fatalities over the past few years. Just a bit of context here. This particular dog was imported from America. They're absolutely huge and incredibly strong. I've got to say, I personally found them quite scary looking. I would probably, I must confess, cross the road if I saw one coming towards me. There have been calls now that that breed should be banned. David, where are you?
It's a difficult one because, you know, my concern is that this breed of dog is going to kill more people, because apparently 10 people have died in attacks by this breed of dog. But you have to look into it and say, is it the owners at fault in all of those cases, or is it the breed itself? So I think we need to look into this much more to ascertain if it is the dog, or if the dog can be safe if they have good owners. Or were the owners bad and badly trained and didn't have a grip on the dog in the cases where there were these, you know, terrible incidents?
Oh.
It's a terrible name for a dog, isn't it? XL Bully. It's obviously, it says a lot about the attitude of the owners, but it is the owners always in this who are responsible rather than the poor mutt. I'm against bans.
Is it? Is it always the owners?
Yeah, I think it is.
Some dogs just have fighting in them?
Well, some are better at fighting than others, but I think the sort of case we're talking about here is the adoption of a dog as some sort of street statement. I've got a Patterdale Terrier. Patterdales are notoriously badly behaved. And she's a little thing. She looks like Jack Russell, a slightly bigger, not much bigger than a Jack Russell. Bonnie. She's now 12. She's a terrible ankle biter.
Right.
And she tends to bark at men with beards. She...
Beardist.
That's you warned.
I won't go anywhere near
She has
you.
been in trouble with the authorities over this. And the police came out from Hereford once to give Bonnie a caution. And they turned up and she rolled over on her back and showed them her tummy. And it was sort of, that was somehow encapsulated the absurdity.
They didn't really come out.
They did. You get them out for that, you won't get them out for a serious
So
crime.
somebody had complained. So I'm guessing, so your dog bit someone and they complained?
Yeah, he was some sort of Lib Dem rambler. And he took against Bonnie and she took against his ankle, his left ankle, I think.
Right, so what was the end of that story? I need to know. What happened?
We were issued with a verbal warning.
Right.
Should it happen again, then it'd be no bonios for at least a week.
Right, well, there you go.
It was going to be, I mean, we were going to be in trouble. We were going to be in legal trouble. But I mean, I am personally against bans. And I think bans are often counterproductive. And you talked about if you saw an XL bully coming down the street, you would cross the street. Well, that is the way to do it. And social messaging...
but it's no good if I cross the street and the thing chases after me and attacks me anyway,
But I think social stigma is the way to do this, rather than legislation.
But I think there are some species of dogs that are banned already under the Dangerous Dogs Act, aren't they? I think there's 10 species that are banned in this country.
That, to me, is enough banning, Ed.
Yeah, but this one, you know, again, I think it needs to be looked into a little bit more. But there's across the board, I mean, there's a real problem.
Well, let's just cross very briefly. Anna Webb is a dog behaviourist. You keep me company now. Good evening to you. What do you think to this? I'm hearing the argument here that it's not the dog, it is the owner. Is that right?
Yes, good evening, Michelle. I would agree. I think the problem is with the XL bully, it's not really a breed as such. It is a mix of lots of different big, strong dogs. And it's become the sort of go-to popular, I would say, status symbol. And the problem with them is they are a combination of bull breeds, which Quentin rightly just said. Some dogs are perhaps easier to train than others. I admire you very much for having a Patterdale. They're not one of the easiest dogs. So for somebody taking on an XL bully that has, for example, never had a dog before, you know, that's rather a silly move. I'm always, you know, really stressing that you must bring a dog into your life, which brings great joy, but it's got to be relevant to your lifestyle, your experience, and your accommodation. So on the banning side, it hasn't worked. We do have the Dangerous Dogs Act. It hasn't worked. It was a piece of knee-jerk legislation back in 1991. We have only 4 banned breeds in the UK. Now, since these breeds have been banned, the point of the Dangerous Dogs Act was to protect the public and stop incidents that we've seen a lot of late, which I feel is down to the pandemic. People beginning to think, right, the must-have accessory now, post-pandemic, is to get a dog and not choosing the right ones, as just mentioned. But the Dangerous Dogs Act hasn't actually stopped dog bites at all. And in fact, they've just increased. And they've increased to be now at their record proportions, you know, 34% up earlier this year than they were pre-pandemic. And deaths by dog, which I find such a tragedy for the dog, has actually rocketed to about 18 in the last 18 months.
It
when
has
prior to the
indeed. There you go. This is a conversation that will rumble on. But Anna Webb, that is a dog behaviourist there. Thank you for your time. Fascinating insight. 2 in 4 deadly dog attacks in the UK in 2021 involved the XL Bulldogs. That rose to 6 in 10 in 2022. Lots of people agreeing that it is the person, the owner, and not the dog that is to blame. You know what? There's not much kind of comfort in that when you think about some of the people that have been attacked and very sadly killed by some of these dogs. But look, Quentin, thank you very much for your company tonight. Lots of appreciation for you tonight. Thank you also for you, David. Moral of the story that we've learned tonight: stay away from Quentin's house. He does weird things with his wife's knickknacks, and his dog is going to attack you.
I could have said trinkets, but that would be misunderstood.
David, trinkets. We're moving on. Don't go anywhere. Nigel Farage is up next.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A warm, sultry night to come for many of us. More hot sunshine into Thursday. A small chance of thunderstorms developing towards western and southwestern areas in particular, as low pressure sends heat and humidity northwards across the UK. Now, any thunderstorms that do develop will be very hit and miss, quite isolated, mostly towards western areas overnight. But there is the chance that these thunderstorms will contain frequent flashes of lightning, so they could be quite visible in the night sky where they do occur. Some low cloud creeping into the east. It's a warm night for many, mid to high teens, and in some places no colder than 20 or 21 Celsius. So some patchy fog about first thing Thursday, some of this misty low cloud in the east, but that will tend to retreat to North Sea coasts. And for many, it's a fine day, but we've still got that potential thundery activity moving north into Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland by the afternoon. It's a very warm or hot day in places, 29 to 32 Celsius in the south, 28 Celsius for northern Scotland. So the heat is extensive across the UK, and it's a warm start to Friday. Again, some of that misty low cloud in the east. Again, the threat of thundery showers towards the west and southwest, but otherwise it's just a case of sunny skies, and the temperatures continue to rise up to 33 Celsius in places by Saturday.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by